We are joined by Lethan Francis. He's the managing director of Francis & Lowe, a firm that specializes in aviation, defense, and space. Lethan, thank you very much for your time. Firstly, we know that air turbulence is sort of a fairly common phenomenon during flights, but when a plane plunges, thousands of feet in just, 6 minutes, just how unusual is such an event?
That's correct. Air turbulence is very common. I think every time we catch a flight, there will always be some level of turbulence. But to have a aircraft descend this quickly and this much is very unusual.
All right, Lethan, clear air turbulence has been identified as a possible cause. So that is like no visible warning in the sky ahead. It's hard to forecast. And studies have claimed that climate change increases clear air turbulence. How so? And does this mean that air travel is about to get a lot more unpredictable?
Yeah, that's correct. There's a number of researchers around the world that have been doing research into climate change and the effects of climate change. And one of the conclusions that they've come to is that the warming of the planet affects the jet streams. That's that very high altitude, fast moving winds. So they predict that there will be more cases of severe turbulence going forward because of climate change.
Lethan, one of the guests on our channel earlier has likened the incident to cancer. If it happens, it happens, suggesting that it occurs regardless of the plane's robustness or the pilot's skill. Would you agree that such an events are inevitable? And could this have been sort of avoided or handled better?
Oh, there are things that pilots can do to avoid turbulence. Like before a pilot embarks on a mission, they get a very detailed briefing that includes meteorological data. So they're actually trained to avoid areas where there's a lot of activity in terms of storm activity. By avoiding the storm activity, you can reduce the likelihood of encountering turbulence. And you'll experience that yourself when you're on an airplane. Sometimes there might be a delay in the plane landing. The pilot will tell you that they're circling the airport because there's some storm activity at the airport, and they'll wait for that storm activity to clear before landing. So there are things that pilots do to avoid turbulence, but it is correct that sometimes you cannot always detect a turbulence.
Right, and so are there certain regions that are more prone to clear air turbulence? For example, areas that are more prone to temperature contrasts, or even certain periods of the year?
Unfortunately, there are, and Singapore, where we are, and Southeast Asia is a region of the world that is known to have more storm activity than any other region in the world. So unfortunately for us being here in Southeast Asia, we're more likely to experience turbulence because of that. So basically, regions of the world where there's a lot of thunderstorm activity is more prone to turbulence.
Right. And so what are the solutions to avoiding, this clear air turbulence? I mean, if it's something that you can't see, you can't detect ahead of time. I know you pointed out, some measures that pilots can take, but, with this clear air turbulence set to become more frequent due to climate change, any measures that can be taken by airlines, for example?
Well, aircraft do fly at higher altitudes. So when you fly at a higher altitude, often you can actually fly over the weather. So that helps. And then, of course, getting that data, that meteorological data, analysing that data and being very responsive, getting continually to get updates, which they do. The pilots continue to get updates on the weather patterns and the weather conditions where they're flying. And then they can also alter their flight path. They can tweak their flight path to avoid some of these weather situations.
And Lethan, as you mentioned, turbulence can be tricky to predict. So what can passengers do to keep themselves safe? I mean, does the incident suggest that we need to maybe change or alter some of the rules or regulations in the air?
What's interesting about this incident is it has brought this issue of turbulence to the fore so that we're more aware of it. But basically, turbulence happens all the time. It's just this situation where very sadly, somebody it's a fatal incident. Somebody has died. So that means that we're now more aware of this. But what we as passengers can do is to basically listen to the cabin crew and buckle up And even when we're flying and that seatbelt sign is not on, it's still good to wear the seatbelt as a precaution.
And you say, turbulence happens all the time, but, so are these clear air turbulence incidents because of climate change. What then can the industry and airlines do? Because, clearly when the plane goes through turbulence, the incidents of wear and tear, that's going to become more frequent. Does this mean that planes will have to be subjected to, more regular maintenance and repairs?
The aircraft aircraft today are very robust. They're designed to fly through all weather conditions. It does not affect the durability, the reliability of the aircraft. Aircraft are designed to encounter and to fly through such difficult weather conditions. But I think what the industry can do is to basically raise awareness for this issue of turbulence and how turbulence can result in, potentially an accident like what we've had here, to basically educate passengers to always wear their seatbelt.
And Lethan, investigation is ongoing. We know that the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board is set to help with the probe as well. What sort of questions do you have or you think that should be answered?
Yeah, so because this is it's an accident, somebody has died, there will be a very thorough investigation. NTSB is involved because it's a US-built aircraft. The Singapore investigators, of course, are involved as well. They'll basically be looking at the sequence of events. They'll be looking at what data was available to the pilots and looking at how they responded and reacted to the situation, what the cabin crew did in this particular situation.
All right. Many thanks for that. Lethan Francis, the managing director from Francis & Lowe.